I recommend the donut balls. They're awesome. The place next to my house, unfortunately, I forget the name of it, but it's like a local homemade place, and it's always packed. And I'm like, I gotta try it out.
Is it made?
Right before you.
Oh, like it's what are you guys doing? Oh, yeah.
It's number 188 in the hymnal, or you may know it, but we're going to sing around come home, whoever you are. So the words are a translation of Rumi.
Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of the Brazos Valley, or Brazos UU for short. My name is Katie Womack, and I am serving as your worship assistant today. We are a welcoming congregation, which means we celebrate and welcome all people of diverse sexual orientations and gender identities. We also strive to welcome people across diversities of race, age, ability, immigration status, and belief. So whoever you are, wherever you have come from, wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. I have a couple of announcements. Next Sunday is a special day, Mother's Day. And we're going to have another communion. This time it's going to be a flower communion. So bring cut flowers to share and celebrate Mother's Day and the flower communion. The following Sunday, May the 15th, is our new member celebration at Lake Bryan. So when you get there, just say you're with the UU Church at the gate, and they should let you in without an entry fee. Bring a potluck dish to share, and your bathing suit if you want to swim. So this is our new member ceremony. So if you've been thinking about becoming a member, there's no better time than the 15th. You'll look back on that day in decades to come with very fond memories of the day at the lake when you became a member of the church. If you want to do that, see Allison today or sometime in the next 2 weeks to make that happen. Then the following Sunday, May 22nd, is our Congregational Meeting, and that's going to be right here at Neal Center, and we're going to be voting on the new board and nominees for positions We'll be voting on next year's budget. And last but not least, we'll be calling Reverend Kiya as our next minister.
Our call to worship this morning in honor of May Day, International Workers' Day, is a quote from Eugene Debs. Do you all know who he is? He ran for president 5 times. He never won, but he was great. He was a really important person. And so this is what he said as he was being hauled off to prison again for nothing. Your Honor, years ago I recognized my kinship with all living things, and I made up my mind that I was not one bit better than the meanest on earth. I said then, and I say now, that while there is a lower class, I am in it. Where there's a criminal element, I am of it. And while there's a soul in prison, I am not free. Eugene V. Debs.
Please say our chalice lighting words with me. We light a chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, as a beacon of hope for all who seek justice, dignity, and compassion, and in celebration of the life of truth and beauty we share together. Now all please join me in saying our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its gift. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
We're going to sing number 121, We'll Build the Land. And there's some issues with the language, so we're going to change it. Want to tell them what it is?
Yeah, so when we get to, if you found 121 in the book, we're going to sing some alternate words when we get to come build a land. We're going to sing come build a world where families and neighbors, united by love, may then create peace. And this is just more inclusive language that has been used many times in place in this.
If you've got a pencil, feel free to write it in.
Will help. Come build a world where families and neighbors, united by love, may then create peace.
tall my nose. Okay, there we go. Let's hope nothing falls apart. Okay, it's so nice to see all of you today. I hope you're having a wonderful start to the day. I have one announcement before we start our story today. Over the summer, UUCBV is having a Pen Pals program. We already have kids and adults signed up, and this program matches one of our younger UUs with one of our older UUs so we can get to know each other intergenerationally. During coffee hour, if you look over there, there's a flyer on the wall and it has all of the information. So let me know if you have any questions, but that's a good place to start. All right. So today we are talking about May Day and labor. So our time for all ages is about collective bargaining. What? Time for all ages, collective bargaining. So what is collective bargaining? Who knows? Okay, what is it, Darby?
Collective bargaining is when a group of workers get together and form a group of people that can more effectively negotiate with management for better benefits.
Right. So we're applying that concept to cows, that type. I have the book here. If you need, it's also up on the screen. So this is called Click, Clack, Moo, Cows That Type by Doreen Cronin. Farmer Brown has a problem. His cows like to type all day long. He hears click, clack, moo, click, clack, moo, clickety, clack, moo. At first, he couldn't believe his ears. Cows that type? Impossible! Click, clack, moo, click, clack, moo, clickety, clack, moo. Then he couldn't believe his eyes. Dear Farmer Brown, the barn is very cold at night. We'd like some electric blankets. Sincerely, the cows. It was bad enough that the cows had found the old typewriter in the barn. Now they wanted electric blankets? No way, said Farmer Brown. No electric blankets. So the cows went on strike. They left a note on the barn door. Sorry, we're closed. No milk today. No milk today, cried Farmer Brown. In the background, he heard the cows busy at work. Click, clack, moo, click, clack, moo, clickety, clack, moo. The next day, he got another note. Dear Farmer Brown, the hens are cold too. They'd like electric blankets. Sincerely, the cows. The cows were growing impatient with the farmer. They left a new note on the barn door. Closed. No milk, no eggs. No eggs, cried Farmer Brown. In the background, he heard them. Click, clack, moo, click, clack, moo, clickety, clack, moo. Uh-oh. Cows that type, hens on strike. Who ever heard of such a thing? How can I run a farm with no milk and no eggs? Farmer Brown was furious.
And with seafood,
Farmer Brown got out his own typewriter. Dear cows and hens, there will be no electric blankets. You are cows and hens. I demand milk and eggs. Sincerely, Farmer Brown. Let's see how it goes. Duck was a neutral party, so he brought the ultimatum to the cows. The cows held an emergency meeting. All the animals gathered around the barn to snoop, but none of them could understand moo. All night long, Farmer Brown waited for an answer. Duck knocked on the door early the next morning. He handed Farmer Brown a note. Dear Farmer Brown, we will exchange our typewriter for electric blankets. Leave them outside the barn door and we will send Duck over with the typewriter. Sincerely, the cows. Farmer Brown decided this was a good deal. He left the blankets next to the barn door and waited for Duck to come with the typewriter. The next morning, he got a note. Dear Farmer Brown, the pond is quite boring. We would like a diving board. Sincerely, the ducks. Click, clack, quack. Click, clack, quack. Clickety, clack, whack. So on that note, the end. Yes? Never give animals typewriters. All right, join me in singing our kiddos out to RE.
Now's the time in our service that we have joys and concerns where we can share our joys and our concerns with our entire community. So if you have a joy or concern, come up and light an electric candle and speak in the mic. Anyone want to share? Maya, you want me to bring the mic to you? No. Okay.
This is my first day back, and I would like to thank the entire UU community for all your prayers and thoughts. I can really feel them when I was sick, and I'm feeling so much better, and I'm just happy to be back.
Mom, I want you.
But it's, Steph and I have a joy that our youngest nephew is launching himself at the age of 23, moving out of state and taking a job, so we're just so happy. Our youngest son Ned and his new-to-be wife Emily are in Austin, and they're getting married on Tuesday. And she's pregnant, and they have a boy, which is very exciting. This is not going to stay. Okay. Yeah, well, yeah, it might be broken. Anybody else? We'll light one for John. Come on.
Our youngest grandson and our younger son, by 5 minutes, celebrated their birthdays this week.
We'll light one for all the unspoken joys and concerns. The reading this morning, it comes from the IWW, which is the workers of the world, the Wobblies. And it was a famous poem that was very popular in the early 1900s called the Outcast Prayer. And they say, "Deliver us from the greed and graft that exist in this nation, and from the parasites who neither toil nor spin, but bedeck their persons with finery until they glitter in the gloaming like a rotten dog salmon afloat in the moonlight." So this morning I'm talking about May Day. Around the world it's still celebrated as International Workers' Day, and it comes about because in the 1880s there was a thing called the Haymarket Massacre, where people were fighting for an 8-hour workday. That's what they were fighting about. And so anarchists threw a bomb and they don't know who did it, and some people were killed. And so in honor of that those deaths, they called Labor Day May Day. Later, when Grover Cleveland was president in the 20s, He didn't like the association with the Bolsheviks and the Soviets. This is pre-Soviets. So they wanted to change May Day, International May Day, to Labor Day. So our Labor Day is so that we are not associating with those European radicals and people from around the world. But I want to tell you some stories today about that period of time, from the 1880s to roughly World War I and right after. That is the most progressive part of the United States history. You can read about it. Nothing I'm going to tell you today is not verifiable. You can look it up. But we are not taught it anymore. Once the Cold War happened and communism and socialism got adopted by the Russians, really, the Soviet Union, and claimed as theirs, and we are against that, that's where you start having the real division between it. But in the early 1900s, right before World War I, things are a lot more interesting. I'm going to move over here where I can see you better. Yeah. So I want to tell you about the workers of the world. So Eugene Debs, he was from Terre Haute, Indiana. He lived there his whole life. And he was a real upright, handsome man. And he ran for office, and he was like the secretary for the city of Terre Haute. And then he got elected to the state as a state representative a couple of times. And he went to Congress. Well, he was also, didn't go to college, and he was a fireman in the railroad. And what that was, a very dangerous job where you basically put the coal in to the steam engines. And he started when he was 14. So his family, he wasn't from money. He, worked really hard his whole life. And he got involved in organizing. Well, he tried government, and government didn't really work for him. He couldn't make the change that he wanted to see in the world. And he was like, those of you all have heard me talk about social gospel, he was one of those. He was a Christian that believed that we were supposed to make a difference on the planet right now. And so he believed in action and making things happen. And what he was fighting for, 8-hour workday, weekend, child labor laws, compensation if you got injured on the job. These are things that they just dreamed about and that people died for. Because what happened was he got involved and made a railroad union, and the railroad union was so successful that it had the very skilled labor people, mostly white people, and other people that were doing more grunt work in the same union. And he won a strike against the Pennsylvania Railroad, but then Grover Cleveland sent the army in to stop the Pullman strike. You all know about Pullman cars? They're beautiful, right? They were handcrafted, they were made by people, artisans. Well, what you might not know is that, like Tesla in Austin, they built housing and everything around the plant. And so your entire life would be controlled by your business. If you were in the mines, maybe you've heard of that, where people got paid in script. Okay. So this is the situation with the Pullman cars. They're very skilled artisans. They're doing kind of arts and crafts on the Pullman cars, and they're trying to make the Pullman cars so beautiful. But there are, always recessions and all that kind of stuff. So he charged really high rent to the people. He's paying them, and then they have to pay for their groceries and their housing and everything out of their money. He cuts their wages whenever times are hard, but he keeps charging them the same thing. So they went on strike, and Eugene Debs was in charge of that strike. And then Grover Cleveland sent the army in because what was on those trains was the U.S. mail. And so he was able to call in and say, you are creating a problem with the mail, and he threw him in jail. This is not the first time that Eugene Debs went to jail. He's a great orator, really interesting person, and he worked for Bryan, that our town is named after.
who was involved in his progressive campaign. So it's interesting, in 1926, I think. Yeah, that's the one. So eventually, all these organizers are trying to organize the unions. They're bringing in the government and soldiers to break these strikes. They're so worried. And they're not even thinking about communists in the Soviet Union yet. We're just talking about people trying to get food and on the table. And some of these people who get shot are children and wives and children. So not unlike Ukraine. It's a very similar kind of period. You never know when the soldiers are going to show up and use machine guns on you. It's that dangerous a situation. Another organizer I'm going to sing you a song about is Mary Harris, who grew up in Cork, Ireland. And she moved to Canada when she was about 10 because they got caught up in the Great Hunger. They were starving to death. And so she came to Canada and she went to school to be a teacher. And she was a teacher for a minute and didn't like it. And she met this man about the time of the Civil War named George Jones. And George Jones was a steel worker in the Knights of Labor. And so they had 4 children and they moved to Vicksburg, Mississippi right before the Civil War. So I don't know if you know much about the Civil War, but the Vicksburg was on the river. And people, the civilians had to hide in caves because they were being bombarded by the Federals from the water. And so there were a lot of starvation. There was really rough. So this is where Mother Jones was living. And right after the Civil War, all 4 of her kids and her husband died of yellow fever within a couple of weeks of each other. So she's in her 40s. She doesn't know what she's going to do. She moves up to Chicago and opens a dress shop, and she's making dresses for people on Lakeshore Drive. And then Mrs. O'Leary's cow kicks over the lantern. You get the Chicago fire, wipes her out, has nothing but the clothes on her back. So she goes to the Knights of Labor Hall because she didn't know what else to do. And that's when she becomes an organizer. So you all have heard of Mother Jones, maybe you've only heard of the magazine. But this is the person we're talking about. And she spent the rest of her life being what she called a hellraiser. And they said she was the most dangerous woman in America. So Eugene Debs is the most dangerous man in America, and Mother Jones is the most dangerous woman in America. And she often got called in to break strikes. I'm going to tell you the story of a strike in a song at the end of the sermon, but the thing you want to know about all these people is there are no microphones. So when they talked, they were doing this. Will you be slaves or be men? Pretty cool, huh? You want to try it? Yeah. So take in your inner Mother Jones and just for a second. We'll count to 3 and we'll say, will you be slaves or be men? So you can feel what it's like to be that kind of organizer. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Will you be slaves or be men? Right. Now she's only about this tall. And she had steel-toed boots, and people tried to kill her, literally. So the company town would be owned, and they would know from the railroad that this organizer was coming to town. So the male organizers, they would throw him off the train, or they would take him out and shoot him, or just march him to jail. Now they walked Mother Jones to jail quite a few times, but she would sit in there and knit. Anyway, she was great because she used everything that the world did against her. She turned around and used it for good. So she said her birthday was May Day. It wasn't, it was in August. But she was like the embodiment of organizing and working for the people. So she was almost like a performance artist. She dressed like your Irish grandmother, and she'd be, shame on you, you should treat people right. They sent guys to kill her. She was staying with somebody's house. She picked up her steel-toed boot and hit the guy in the head and killed him. I'm just telling you, these are all true stories, and we don't hear about these people. Her autobiography is online, you can read it for free. But Eugene Debs and Mother Jones and another guy named Big Bill Haywood, they put together the industrial workers of the world. One big union, that was their motto. And anybody who earned a wage could be in the union. Now here's where it gets really amazing, you all. You may not realize this, but until after World War II, blacks and women were not usually, and immigrants were not usually allowed in the unions. But the IWW let everybody in. Everybody together. Everybody working. Now what killed the union, I know I have to go short here. What killed the union was, in World War I, they had a sedition law. And so you weren't allowed to talk against the draft, and you weren't allowed. It's hard for us that, grew up in the 60s or later, for us to imagine that you would go to prison for 20 years if you said, the draft is a tool of the capitalist system. You would go to jail 4 to 20 years. I mean, I think we can't imagine that now, but that's how they broke the union. That's how they broke the IWW. The last story I want to tell you is about a guy named Joe Hill. Anybody heard that song ever? I dreamed I saw Joe Hill last night. Do you want to know about him? So he was a Swedish immigrant, and he worked in the IWW. He's an organizer. So IWW was most effective in the West, working on the timber trade, like lumberjacks, trying to organize lumberjacks. In fact, they would talk. The town would be owned by the company. They'd round them up. They would literally stand on soapboxes on the street corner and talk, and then they'd throw them in jail because the company owned the town, the company owned the sheriff. It's not unlike now, but we're just less, obvious about it. So they would be locked up, and they would put a call out to the IWW, and all the organizers would come on the train. They would ride the rails like a hobo, right? And they would come to town and try to get arrested. So what would happen is these little timber towns would be full of people who would get arrested, and they couldn't keep them in the jail anymore. So once in Seattle, they put them on the roof of the jail, and all the people who had been arrested started jumping up and down at the same time, and they cracked the ceiling of the jail. These are great stories. If you want to read about them, I would recommend reading The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. But if you search IWW or the Wobblies, one big union, you'll get to know. So Joe Hill, he's Swedish, and he's organizing, and he's in Utah, in Salt Lake City, when he gets arrested for a murder that he didn't commit of a grocer and his son. Well, it just turns out that Joe had been in an altercation over a woman the same day, and so he had been shot. Just a flesh wound or something, but they used that to say that he was guilty, circumstantial. And then his choice was to be hung or to be shot with a firing squad. Now, Joe Hill was a songwriter too, so I'm going to sing you a Joe Hill song. You ready? Okay. We will meet by and by in that glorious place above the sky, way up high. Work and pray, live on hay. There'll be pie in the sky when you die, that's a lie. That's the kind of songs he wrote. That's the way they organized the American socialists. Okay? So they're doing that kind of work. It's really interesting. Joe Hill is gonna die. They have a letter writing campaign. They get Warren G. Harding writes a letter to the governor of Utah, please don't shoot him. It's just a political assassination, basically. And the night before he's set to be shot, he writes a letter to Big Bill Haywood, who is really big. He's a really big guy. Big Bill Haywood, and he says, don't mourn, organize. And that's why people sing about Joe Hill, and that's why they tell that story. Now, so here's the thing. Joe Hill, they go, ready, aim, fire. And Joe's the one who said fire. And then they took his body and they cremated it. There were 600 IWW unions across the country. They sent a packet of his ashes to each one of them. Most of them had a wake. And some of those people decided to maybe put him in the punch. And they had a drink. And they drank Joe Hill, including Billy Bragg, who was a famous organizer in England in the 80s. he found the last packet and he drank Joe Hill. So cheers, y'all, Joe Hill.
So I'm gonna sing in this song, it's called Dishcambergame. And it's about Mother Jones and the Arnold, Pennsylvania strike of 1900. Now why should you care? You should care because it's the first time I've lost my pen. You got one? It's the first time that Mother Jones got all the women around the strike to work together and chase the scabs off the mine site. Y'all know what a scab is? Okay. And they were so effective at it that nobody got killed. And they won that strike. And that was one of Mother Jones's innovations. And they call that group a Dishcambergame. So almost any demonstration still today, if they have a women's brigade, they often are called a Dishcambergame because of the story. But again, I want you to think about her and see if you can learn a little bit about her. There's some, if you go on YouTube, you can see videos of her talking and stuff. But I'll sing you this song, This Is All True. Old Mary Harris was 5 feet tall, gray hair and eyes and Irish blue. And she buried her husband, 4 little ones. Now the union was all she knew. And she'd stand up to any company gun. If there was a fight, she was home. And the breaker boys and the silk mill girls called her Mother Jones. Well, J.P. Morgan owned the Drip Mouth mine. He paid $1.35 a day. 12 to 14 hours, 6 days a week. Yeah, that was the company way. But anthracite coal is a hard, hard coal. It burns so clean and true. And it burns out the dreams of a miner's soul and the blood of the UMW. Oh, Mother cried out, shame, shame, shame. There's nothing to lose but our chains. And many a miner's life's been saved by a Dishcambergame. Now the strikers held out 4 long months, hard bread and coffee every day, reading the scabs and the guns and the Pinkertons. Their courage was slipping away. So the union called in Mother Jones. You know this part. She said, "Will you be slaves or be men?" And she told all the women to meet up at dawn, and they'll go to that lion's den. So the women marched to the Drip Mouth mine with their dishpans, mops, and brooms. And the sheriff said, "Now, you go back home. I'm afraid you'll upset the mules." And an angry woman knocked that sheriff down. She said, "To heck with the mules and with you." And they take the scabs all the way back to town, and that strike was almost through. Oh, Mother cried out, shame, shame, shame. There's nothing to lose but our chains. And many a worker's life's been saved by a Dishcambergame. The women kept watch every night with
with their babies in their arms. And the Union won the Arno strike, and not a soul was harmed. And Mother traveled another 30 years. Where there was a fight, she was home. And the breaker boys and the sill mill girls called her Mother Jones. Thank you. Y'all, they're still at IWW. They're mostly working to get a 15-hour minimum wage. They're mostly working with people who work at fast food. That's what the organizers are working on right now. If you look them up, you can help. You can get involved. And they're still singing. There's still a songbook of songs. Yeah. So, y'all, will you be slaves or will you be men? Or people? Or human? Right? Yeah, the other thing I want to tell you about her that I haven't told you is that she was not for suffrage, which is shocking. But she felt that it distracted women from the plight of labor. Not everybody does the right thing. Like William Jennings Bryan was, he was a prosecution in the Scopes trial. Like, he wasn't always the most progressive person. Not everybody does the right thing, and not everybody becomes an organizer right away, right? We can do it when we have time and when we're ready. So thank you for listening today.
Now let an offering be taken to sustain and strengthen this place which is sacred to so many of us. Community of memory and of hope, for we are now keepers of the dream. This church shares the proceeds of the offering plate donation every week to support important nonprofit organizations with which we work. This month we are proud to support the Pride Community Center. Please be as generous as you can. We give thanks for these gifts we have given, for those we receive, and for each other. May your generosity return to you tenfold.
Now's the time in our service where we go into the wise silence, as Emerson said. So we have a time for meditation and quiet, or prayer if you choose to. And then we'll end it with a Buddhist meditation. So I'm going to hit this and we'll have our moment of silence, and then I'll take you through a meditation.
The sound of babies is the sound of wise silence. It's a good sound. This meditation that I'm going to walk you through is from the Buddhist tradition, and normally you would say this for yourself for 6 months to a year before you would say the second part, but we're gonna do the short version. So repeat after me if you choose to. May you be free from danger. May you be mentally happy. May you be physically happy. May you have ease of well-being. So after 6 months or a year of saying it for yourself, then we're gonna get someone in mind that you love, and you're gonna say it for them, or many people that you love. And you say it like this: may you be free from danger. May you be mentally happy. May you be physically happy. May you have ease of well-being. And this last time, we're going to say it for someone to whom we have a resentment. People in Washington are very good for this. Yeah, try not to look around when you do this. May you be free from danger. May you be mentally happy. May you be physically happy. May you have ease of well-being. May it be so. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to New York Island, from Redwood Forest to Gulf Stream water. This land was made in me. As I was walking that criminal highway, I saw above me the skyway, I saw below me that golden valley. This land was made and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to New York Island, from Redwood Forest to Gulf Stream water. I rode this railroad, and I followed my footsteps to the sparkling sand of her diamond desert. And all around me, a voice was sounding. This land was made and me. As I was walking, I saw a sign there. And that sign said, no trespassing, but on the other side, it didn't say nothing. This land was made for you and me. This land is your land. This land is my land. From California to New York Island, from Redwood Forest to the Gulf Stream water. This land was made and me. Thank y'all for singing.
Now please join me in extinguishing the child. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of the community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we gather together again.
trying to decide what's the right one to do. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Go out in the world, let it shine. Go in peace.